Now calling to order the Tuesday, March 19th, 2024 meeting of the Mashpee Sewer Commission. If I could ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and if we could please observe a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Before we get into our meeting here on the agenda, is there any business in the audience not on this agenda that needs to be brought before this commission? Seeing none, we'll roll into our meeting minutes. Mr. Lyons is not present, and myself, we're not here for this meeting, so everyone else will be voting on it. Discussion.
I have read the minutes. I find them to be true and correct and move they be approved.
Madam Vice Chair, any comments?
No, I have none, thank you.
We could use a second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I think Ms. Sprout is by a nose on that one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. No other minutes here. Moving on to our new business, sewer construction update with GHD.
I think this is working, yes? No?
Yep, I can hear you.
Or this one?
Yep.
That one? Okay. Let me go ahead and share. Oops. Excuse me. There. Good. Let's see. That didn't work. It worked on my screen, but not up there. Well, we'll continue on. Okay. So it's been a little over a month, so there's been a lot of activity at the treatment plant site in particular and out in the collection system. I'll start with the treatment plant. And this last, I think it's been about 6 weeks since I was reported last. They've been working a lot on the sand beds and also bringing in some equipment into the buildings and getting the buildings built out in the interior. That happens to be a picture of one of your nearly completed sand beds. You can see there was a pipe sticking out of the ground last time I showed. Now there's a concrete pad out there and also a ramp for the equipment, maintenance equipment to get down there. The process building, exterior, they're just doing some miscellaneous things. This is a picture of the outside of the chemical room. The large window-like opening is actually a translucent panel that allows light into the building, and it's removable. So if you have to take out a chemical tank, you can take it out without taking down a wall or breaking up the tanks. The nice thing about these translucent panels is that often the operators don't even need to turn on the lights. So it is an energy saver. The openings with the pink in it, those two small ones behind the generator, but the other, or the heater actually, the other one is toward the right of the picture. Those are your chemical fill ports. So then when the trucks come up, they will be able to offload their chemicals right into the building without going inside. And this is the chemical room, the other side of the building. You can see on the left-hand picture, there's a nice gray coating on it. That's a chemical-resistant coating that protects your concrete floors. Once you start getting chemicals in there, it also allows for easy cleanup should a spill occur. And you can see the chemical containment wall on the other side. This is designed to hold chemicals should the tank rupture by any chance. The room is designed to contain that chemical and not let it out into the environment. Blower room, exciting news. We got our blowers in. They're not installed yet. They're just sitting there, but those are your air blowers that provide air for your process tanks. You can also see the HVAC system is being installed and the electrical as well inside that blower room. You can also see the FRP ceilings in the room and the light fixtures that are going up in the ceiling. Starting to get an office area. The office is basically just a blank room right now, but we're beginning to have bathrooms. Those are the showers that have been installed, and they're building up around them. And the stairwells and are also closet spaces are also being closed in. Down on the lower level, we have the mechanical room. Again, we're starting to see a lot more equipment. That's a hot water heater, all important. This is basically providing your heat and air for the building. Sort of hidden by Meredith right now is the heat exchanger. So the idea is that the warm wastewater, the heat from that is used to help heat the water that is being used to heat your building.
Yeah, that's better.
Also on the lower level, to your right is the pump room. Pumps aren't here yet, but eventually you'll have a row of pumps at least in front of the first train, which are the first. There's 4 trains. Each train has two channels, and each channel has 1 MBR unit. So this project will include the addition of 2 MBR units, and the pumps that go with those units will be installed down at the far end of that. But you've got room for, as you build out the next 4 trains, those will get built in. And then the electrical room is on the left side. Again, we don't have our big panels yet, but the room's ready for them. Preliminary treatment side, the exterior is complete, and I say for now, because as you can see, we don't have a door yet, but we do have it. It's all trimmed up. You've got your louvers, you've got your translucent panels. They don't put the doors in until the very end because those workers go in and out of the doors with their equipment and their dirty hands and dirty gloves, and you are getting white FRP doors, and they will get pretty beat up. So they've installed these wooden temporary doors while they do construction. Oops. Inside the preliminary treatment building, they're continuing to install equipment. The screens were in last time we saw, but there's another view of them, as well as some of the HVAC equipment that's going in. We've got those blue pieces of equipment are actually grip pumps. And that's going to be used to separate the grit out from your influent wastewater. And we have a air handling unit inside, and because this is a hazardous area, it's pretty well buttoned up there, Jared, so. And you can see, again, the light fixtures from the ceiling, the FRP roof. Because this is handling raw wastewater, it is considered a hazardous space. It's corrosive. We do have air changes that are going on to derate the building somewhat, but you've got open channels with wastewater flowing in them. So we have corrosive resistant coatings, including your ceiling. Your electrical fixtures are explosion proof. That's all being installed. Outside, as I said, we got the sand beds. Here's a far look at the one that's done. And the picture on the right shows the ramp going down into the beds. They're not very deep. You've got a nice sand here. They shouldn't be accumulating much water while they're being maintained. And the process tanks are going in. These are on the On the left is the distribution boxes, the secondary in front of us, and then in the far part of the picture are the effluent distribution boxes. And the picture on the right is the top of your influent pump station wet well, and that's the access hatch where they can pull the equipment out of. So as you can see, there was a lot of work done at the treatment plant this last period. Collection system north, nothing was done, which is what we expected. No news there. They basically shut down for the winter, and no change from the last time we reported. They've got some final pavement to do when the spring comes. On the south, working a bit in the larger roads, Quiniquisette and Orchard Road. They did pressure testing on Quiniquisette and gravity sewer installation on Orchard, and doing some temporary pavement. They'll continue with Orchard Road into March. Pump station, I haven't changed the picture because it pretty much looks the same on the outside. What happens, though, is I'm never there when they're working on the inside. But they have completed, or the HVAC and electrical at Falmouth Road, or they're working on the electrical, completed the HVAC, and the same with Mashpee Neck Road. So those stations are progressing nicely. So with your construction project and your cash flow, this is the wastewater treatment plant. Basically, they've expended about 54% of their funds, and they are about, it's hidden on both of our screens, 65% of the time. They have not asked for a time extension. As we talked about in previous months, they are not going to meet this schedule, but until they ask for a time extension, I'm not going to show an extension of the cash flow. But the reason that they're tracking low is because they can't meet their schedule. They can't do the work until the equipment arrives. And come on. Frozen. There you go. There's the North project. Again, we're flat because they're not working on this job right now. It's showing a little bit under projection. I'm not worried about that. They don't have a lot to do. They've got 165 days left to do it, so they'll be fine. This project may end up with, not going to promise you anything, but it could end up with a credit coming back to the town. The reason is that we try to be conservative with this is a unit price project. We try to be conservative with our quantities so that we can not have an overrun on pavement. So this one looks like it's going to come home very nicely. And on the south project, that you can see that this is steadily rising. It'll flatten out toward the end, but they're on schedule and on budget. Both projects, I think, will come home just fine. And that's it. Questions?
Questions from our commissioners?
How is when is the bid for 1A completed?
The big what?
The bid, you put the bid out?
Oh, that's right. We have a project on the street right now for the alternate rebid. So the work that was not awarded as part of this original Phase 1 design is now on the street. We're going to open bids, I believe, April 8th.
How long will the bid period be?
4 weeks. So they've had them for a couple weeks now.
Good. Thank you.
Other questions from our commissioners?
I'm curious as to the sand beds. Now, this is for the original build-up of the sewer plant, and it's going to be for the 4 tanks. This sand bed that's being constructed will be able to service all 4 tanks if we choose to use those.
There's 8 sand beds planned. 4 are being installed as part of this Phase 1 project. Those will serve 1 train. And then the second 4 are being done as part of Phase 2. And that will serve Train 2.
Do you know where the sand is coming from? Do you know where the sand is coming from?
It's native. It's right there. It's a great
Beautiful
site.
sand.
We need an ocean on it.
Well, I know that construction sand is, it's a diminishing quantity, and I was just wondering if it was coming from, say, Carver, because there's some controversy about how much sand is being removed from Carver and being sold. I was just wondering, is that where our sand?
No, that's your sand.
So you're saying the sand is from Mashpee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Benefit of our landmass being one giant sandbar. Other questions and comments? Hearing none, I'm eager to hear about Phase 2 planning.
Ooh. Phase 2 planning. Well, we had the joint meeting. I don't know if I can,
So,
I don't think there's anything for me to add, Jared.
nope, I meet every week with Bob Drake. So we met this morning. Went over some of the possible routes of running pipes and cost reductions. There's a possibility right off the bat, looks like we're fairly confident we might be able to take 2 lift stations off the process by going with more low pressure. Obviously now it's got to be vetted out. He's trying to right now crunch what savings could be and what's realistic just in that section. And that's what we've been doing, is kind of going through and finding, can we go through here? Can we directional drill as opposed to digging trenches down the middle of the road? You know, which requires police details, repaving every night, because like on Mashpee Neck Road, especially in the wintertime, we'd have to repave just in case if it snows. The plows are able to go through. So they're doing all that. They're marking out this week the borings, so people will see throughout their neighborhoods markings on the ground. They got dig safe coming out just to show where the 100 and something points they have to do borings. And
Yeah, so I'm very happy to extend this to talk about the Phase 2 design if
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that would be great. So didn't come planned for that, but that's right. I'm involved with that project too. Bob is
Yep.
managing it. The surveyors have been out. Oh, no, they haven't yet.
No, they actually, we're just doing the
The
markups.
surveyors will be out. So you're going to have crews doing field surveying. They're going to be also knocking on doors, because what they want to do is get the sill elevation of the house, the first floor of the house, to make sure that it can be served by the gravity sewer. That should be starting up very quickly.
Yeah, they're doing the south first, which is predominantly low pressure. We went and did a drive around last week just to kind of feel the topography of the area, and it's very hilly. I mean, at some points, if we went gravity, the pipe would be 30 feet below ground. So, yeah,
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
so that's what we're trying to go through now. And okay, this is clearly going to be, low pressure, but in the next couple weeks, they'll be going out there and actually doing the borings, and then they fill it back in, and then they come back out.
So the surveyor, so if people are wondering who's running around in the yellow vest and knocking on my door, that's what you're getting. Also, field investigations on the soil borings, and this is a 2-pass system that this contractor does. This is a subcontractor. They're going to come out and they're going to do what's called a vacuum excavation at boreholes along the routes for the sewers, and also at the lift pump station sites. And the reason we do them so often in the roads, it's a state requirement. It's going to tell you how thick your pavement is, and that helps us decide how to restore your roads. It's also, they vacuum excavate so that they are minimal risk of damaging your utilities. So they won't drill through a water main or a gas main. Hopefully they'll find it without damaging it. And then they actually bore down and take samples that we'll keep in case there's some investigation we need to do. But that's a 2-pass. So they're going to have a crew come through, big equipment, suck out the first 5 feet, put it back to restore it somewhat, and then a week or 2 later, there'll be another dig that's actually going to drill down.
Yeah, they're going to be providing a map. I reviewed the first draft today. The map's going to have a little bit more information on it. It's going to just have the layout south or north, and then it's just going to give a brief description on the map, so, and then rough start dates of when this project's gonna be in, so somebody, if they want to, could print it off the webpage, put it on their fridge, and now, okay, these are the areas that are gonna be working. I told them, instead of having multiple pages, if we can fit as much information as we can as far as the, start dates and where they expect road closures, if there's gonna be any, and little notes like, if they're in front of your house, it's roughly 2 hours worth of work, and then they'll be moving on, so people just have that information, so.
Thank you. Questions, comments from our commissioners? Give Catherine a chance to take her seat.
I just have one question.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Yeah, I barely could hear Jared, but I'm just verifying that the streets for the next phase and the dates for when the activities in the streets will be taking place? Will that be on the website?
She's looking for dates and times when the next activities will be taking place. that we're
Yes, that's what
describing.
maybe I wasn't loud enough, actually. Let me turn this. Yeah, so yeah, what we're gonna do is they're gonna put these dates and everything on a map, so that way people can, if they wanted to print it out, I'll have the rough estimation of when the project's gonna start, how long they'll approximately be in front of each one of those properties, like doing the boring. They say it's about 2 hours. So we'll have all that information on there for people to have and be able to just download if they wanted to and stick it on their fridge.
And the boring program is going to take about 3 months. So you're going to have these rigs out here for quite a while.
Yep. They say get about 5 of them a day on average, so out of 100 and something.
I have a question. Did I miss something? Was this part of the Phase 1 project?
No, this is phase 2 design.
Okay, but this boring activity, was that part of Phase 1?
Yeah, we did it.
You did, okay.
I have the logs to prove it.
Okay, no, that's fine, but I mean, we're not talking about green stakes going out and all that stuff.
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's construction, yeah.
Yeah, for some time. Other questions from our commissioners? Hearing none, we'll roll on to our discussion that's central to tonight's meeting. Item 4 under new business. This is a discussion and vote to allow the wastewater superintendent to explore the cost impact of betterments for the sewer project. Now, just to put things in perspective and how we got to this point, for Phase 1, this commission did vote and approve a methodology for assessing betterments out of necessity. That necessity was private property. Private property cannot be improved using public funds unless we recoup that somehow. So betterments have been assessed to condominium associations for places where we have had delay sewer. We have long discussed in planning and the life of this commission, a sewer project that would ideally not cost the taxpayer additional funding, betterments, things of that nature. The possibility of that, being a reality for all phases, I don't know. I don't have an answer. All I'd like to say before we open this up to our wastewater superintendent and to the commission and the public is that we seem to be a town that likes options. When we take options to town meeting and let the town choose, we put the ball in their court. The methodologies that are most likely to succeed, and we let them choose. I would like to ask that this commission and future commissions always have Plan A being not assessing betterments on individual households. That should always be Plan A. Whether we can do that or not, that's up to us, and that's up to the political and economic environment we're currently in and future commissions sit in. I just want to warn that betterments done in an unfair manner can turn certain neighborhoods against each other and certainly could kill a lot of the great support we've enjoyed for the sewer project. However, it is a reality that we have to assess. And with that, I'd like to open up discussion on having our wastewater superintendent do exactly that, assess the impact of betterments on this project.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm asking for. We understand the towns always move forward, or I've understood the towns always tried to move forward without assessing betterments, and we'll obviously continue to try to do that. But what we want to do is just at least have the option to take and see what the cost is with a betterment, If it's a 50-50 split, might be one scenario, 70-30, 60-40, however, we'll come up with a couple of different options to show how it would all plug in, how it would play out, and what those payments would look like. But we also have to take into other factors, like the people that are tying into the sewer still do have costs above and beyond just their taxes. They have to, hire people to do the sewer connection side. So we also need to factor in what that cost is, and at what point does it become ridiculously unfair for either them or the town, depending on the cost of the sewer. But we definitely want to have the opportunity to explore it and then represent it to this commission prior to town meeting, so you guys would have an understanding of what we're going to present and what your recommendation or what you would like to see go forward at the town meeting. But what we don't want to be is in a situation where somebody stands up and says, why didn't you do betterments? Because it's going to be cheaper, and if we don't look at it, we can't argue. We can say, well, you're right, it might be cheaper, but we just don't know. But so this way, at least we can say, these are the facts, this is what we based it off, these are the numbers, and it can be demonstrated if somebody asks. But I didn't want to put Abrams Group through that routine without first getting permission that at least it's an option that we're exploring, doesn't mean we're going to commit to. So.
Having used my bully pulpit already, I'll open this up to the rest of the commission. Out of courtesy for both the reality of meeting over the web, I'd like to ask Ms. Harris if she first has any questions or commentary.
Yes, my question is a very basic one, is why do we need to vote to allow Jared to do this exploration?
From what I understand, you guys have, or the town has had a stance so far of no betterments, that we're just not moving forward with it. So I want the vote to, so people know that we're going to explore them. We're going to explore them every phase. Not that we're going to assign them, but it just we'd be negligent not to at least look at it and see what it is, because it could end up at some point being the cheaper option or the better option. But we just won't know until we at least run through the exercise. And I think this is just a way to memorialize it, that from here now and in the future, it'll at least be an option, that's something we can present as one of the ways to pay for any future projects, including this one.
Does that answer your question, Madam Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you.
Other members of our commission, Ms. Sprout.
Is there anything in the agreements that we've already signed that would prohibit us from doing betterments?
I haven't found anything in writing. All I keep hearing is, we told the people no betterments. There will be no betterments. And so I'm looking for that. Now there's an official stance, they'll at least be looked at. Doesn't mean we're going to sign them. But at least in that way in the future, we know that to ask. We'll just present it.
Catherine.
I may have a two-part question. I'm not really sure, so formulating it. But betterments could be considered, I think, but the point is that don't we have to first analyze fees per phase of the project? Any potential, what would those fees per household or per number of bathrooms per household or whatever it is, what would that fee structure look like? And then, because it might be different. And then think about how the betterment would fit in, because some units will have a much bigger use of, some households will use the sewer system a lot more than others, right? I'm just curious about those factors and how would that fit into the analysis of betterments?
So betterments are for the construction portion of the project, not for the operation, where fees are going to be used for the operation of the project, of the facility. So in essence, I think right now we have an estimated operating cost annually of $800,000. So we would try to figure out how to recoup those costs through the fees. But the betterment is actually strictly
For
attached to
construction.
the construction phase of this.
Okay, so it's associated with the phase of the households. So if I'm in phase one, there's potentially a different betterment
And this
cost as
is where
opposed
it
to
gets
phase three?
This is where it gets very tricky. You can conceive of a very egalitarian way of coming at this and saying, well, if everybody in the town, at the end of the day, we cannot get Phase X funded 100%, we need to assess a betterment. you can see where
Yeah.
all residents paying a little bit. Now, it's a tough pill to swallow, but it's one you can swallow, as opposed to everyone who was in Phase 1 and Phase 2 didn't pay a betterment, but those houses in Phase 3 and Phase 4.
Exactly.
Why did they not have to pay and I do?
So I can explain part of that for at least Phase 1 and Phase 2. So Phase 1, well, let me actually start with Phase 2. Phase 2, the only areas that we normally would consider for betterments is just the collection system. The treatment plant itself is a shared cost for the town. Everybody benefits from it. So in Phase 1, you can argue, or I would say, that the collection system was part of the plan, because without that collection system in Phase 1, there's no starting the plan. You have to have it. So therefore, to say that it's unfair, no, it's a different situation. It's apples and oranges, you know, it's just different. So in this case, in Phase 1, basically everybody shared in the construction and the startup of the plant. From here on out, though, we can't say it wasn't fair to them and it wasn't fair to me this time in 10 years from now, because the economy changes. Funding sources that we might have access to now might not be there in 5, 10 years, 15 years, or there might be more funding. We just don't know. But every situation is different, and to compare, oh, our phase didn't have it and our phase did, that's not thinking it through. That's just being angry that you might get stuck with a bill.
Unfortunately, an angry voter is still an angry voter.
It is an angry voter,
And
but I
this-
think we can articulate at the time, why would we come to this situation, whether it be the cost of the project, the size of it, did a funding source layout? But right now, if you were just to compare Phase 1 and Phase 2, and if, let's say, it was decided to go forward with betterments, that would be the initial argument. You needed the collection system in Phase 1. But honestly, this is just that we're going in this open. We don't make this, I don't make the decision. I want to provide you and the town with a well-vetted, this is what we this is the process we went through, these were the suggestions made, and then this was the recommendation I gave, and then whatever you guys voted on is what we will present to the town. And they can see it.
Exactly. And I think one thing to keep in mind, as a town, Mashpee does have a relatively recent tool that some towns do not, to secure funding for public works projects, and that's we have a split tax. We tax residents differently than we do people who are non-residents. That is another, in this bigger picture, betterments is not the big picture, it's a piece of the whole funding picture. So as we look at federal resources, as we look at state funds, the state revolving fund, as we look at our own tax base, and we look at betterments, part of that is to remember we have that split tax. And I would like to see that used ahead of assessing residents. But again, this is all one piece of the bigger picture, and without this piece that we're voting to have the wastewater superintendent look at, we don't have the whole picture. Other questions and comments from our commissioners?
What's the timeline for this?
We're going to have it before town meeting, and
Okay.
honestly, Matt Abrams has been already looking into what the costs were. I just didn't want him to go down a rabbit hole that wasn't even going to be considered.
Yeah.
So I had asked him to kind of hold up, but he is already, basically built a spreadsheet that once you guys say yes, then it, or if you say yes, then we'll just take in, he'll start plugging in numbers, and it should start calculating everything out for us, and it should happen pretty rapidly. Because he does understand we want to present this in a joint meeting, whatever the results are, just that way when we go to town meeting, the select board can either, be on board or understand the whole picture and not get surprised by anything, but also give you guys the opportunity to vote and save time instead of multiple meetings.
Speaking of which, we do have our select board liaison here. Would you like to comment, or would you like to?
Be happy to. You guys good with that?
Absolutely.
Go for it.
The chair recognizes select board member John Cotton.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm John Cotton, 30 Knobsco Road,
I
Mashpee.
recognize that too.
Only because I'm not here in official capacity, but I do have an opinion, a strong opinion about betterments, and a couple things that I would consider. Angry voters, confusion. To say, I think those are my two biggest points. We've always discussed in the discussions I've been a selectman for 9 years. Betterments, we were not doing betterments. What other towns do, so in my opinion, we did not go forward with phase one with betterments. I understand the cost would have been minimal, but the fact is, we did not have betterments for people in phase one. If we were to go forward with betterments on phase two, I'd like to know what phone number was going to ring with those questions of why me and not them. For me, that is the reason why I would recommend not even a consideration, because it doesn't matter, because I think it would be a bad decision. I think there was another point as far as confusion. If we would have this for a town meeting, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, we're trying to have, before town meeting, have it vetted out.
Right, but
If it's decided amongst this commission to say that they want to do betterments, let's say that's what the result was, like it's going to be cheaper, well, then that's what we'll present to town meeting. But if they come out and say, no, you haven't shown me the evidence for a betterment, not that I'm pursuing a betterment, but whatever the cheapest cost is, and it turns out not to be no betterments, we won't even bring it up at town meeting. We'll say this is what was the option that's the cheapest and way to go. But if somebody was to stand up and say, well, why didn't you do betterments? Because it's cheaper. How do I argue that if we don't review what the cost is?
good point. But so my question is, no, we just signed off on town meeting last night.
Yep.
So how are you going to add this
agenda.
to a warrant article that we already signed off on?
That's why I was pushing to have this meeting held before your meeting so that we could deliver that information to you.
Yeah, so
That didn't materialize,
So-
unfortunately.
I guess my confusion is, how are you going to talk about betterments at town meeting floor when it's not part of the articles that they're going to be making a decision on? So it's
Because
betterments,
wouldn't it
and-
fall under the 96 million funding, like this is how we would fund it? So you wouldn't have to, you won't have a specific betterment question, you'd have the 96 million question. And this is how we would decide then how to pay it back. Because if that's the case, how do we put this current article forward without specifically outlining that it's a non-betterment payment? So either way, it would say that the article would be sunk, I would guess.
listen, I'm not an attorney, but I just know that we signed off on this last night.
Yep.
So what we signed off on last night is, if you will, that's Bible.
Right.
So that's going in front of town meeting. That's in the book. So what we signed off on last night, that's it. So if you go to town meeting and say, oh, we're talking about considering betterments, you're going to put it on the town floor to say, what do you think? I don't know how that works.
No,
But-
so I think you're under the impression we're going to just come out and present betterments. And I think this was the confusion you were having after the joint meeting. We're not coming out right now and saying we're going to assign a betterment, we're going to give you the option, we're going to put it out there. What we're saying is, before that meeting, we need to vet what that funding source is going to be. Is it just going to be straight like we did before, which it could be, but let's say it does show that, let's say it's $1,000 cheaper for everybody a year to sign a betterment. We need to show that, but we don't know until we run the numbers. I can tell you we've done, like I said, a cursory search, and it doesn't support a betterment.
So, yeah, I guess, again, I'm back to the what's fair is fair. How are you going to answer the question when the first question is going to be, did you assign betterments for the people in phase one?
So betterments to pay a bill, and there was no bill. The project's been funded
No,
100%.
That's going to fall on deaf ears. Because we did the right thing as a town, and we had a pool of money kind of assigned to go towards the designation towards phase one. I get that. But how are you going to go against the townsperson, the townspeople asking a question about what money you spent on you didn't have betterments phase one, but now you want to consider phase two for betterments, and then maybe each round, I think you mentioned, and you want to consider it or leave it on the table for each round?
So as a planning process, yes. we need to go through the process, because I remember watching a video of, I think it was the last town meeting, where somebody asked a question about the sewer project, and literally there was 3 minutes of awkward silence on the video. I need to have the answers. We need to sit there and say, now, if the answers come back prior to that and it says betterment's not supported, I'm not even going to bring it up at the meeting. It's funded, this is how we're going to follow the path of the first phase.
Right.
And then let's say I'm here for phase 5. If it still doesn't economically show that betterment's the best way to go, it will not be brought up again, other than we will then, at that point, after if we get approval today, is vet that beforehand.
So,
At some point, it could weigh where it's the other direction. If that's the case, we'd need to at least bring it to the commission, whoever's on it at that time, to then decide, do they want to approach that? Or do they say, hey, you know what, we're just going to keep it as a high tax rate? Okay, great.
and again, this is back to, when we proposed phase 1, we did, and I'm sure everybody was here, everybody was there. We had a unanimous outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was literally historic. For us to even have a chance at making, the same outcome, maybe not unanimous, but again, they're going to be clicking a clicker, if you will. Maybe harder to get it unanimous, but I think if you present possibility of betterments, I think the confusion that it'll present to the town, that, people in this room, people on other committees probably have a better understanding of what's going on. I think we have to keep it as transparent and as clean as possible. And if everybody understands, I think, it's my single opinion, that if we divide up the cost equally amongst the town in the best manner, equally, that is the best way to proceed and the best chance of succeeding with phase 2. That is my opinion. As the chair has mentioned, there are other options that we have at our disposal, and we're talking about the split tax. We are at 5%. We held at 5% for a reason. My opinion, I wanted to hold at 5% because when we need, again, this does not hit the taxpayers until the project is complete. Each phase is complete, correct?
That's correct.
So as each phase is complete, it'll hit the taxpayer. We will know when that is in advance. So if we need to go to the well, if you will, for the split tax, to go from 5% to 10% to help mitigate some of the tax increase, we can do so. But if we add the complexity of phase 2 and if I connect, the fact is everyone in phase 2, everyone in phase 1 is going to have to pay $8,000 to $15,000 to connect. That's just a ballpark. It depends how far you are, if you have to go around your house. I walked out with some of the surveyors as far as what the potential piping is. So say it's $8,000 to $15,000. I think that's paying into a new Title V that you're forced into. You're forced to connect. I think that's a big enough burden for someone to realize. Now, granted, if you're part of the connection, you get the benefit of a new connected to a sewer system. So there is some benefit, equality to the value of your property. I get that. But if you're not connected and you already have a perfectly working Title V system, you don't have to pay that $8,000 or $12,000, $15,000 in additional cost to connect. So there is some benefit to not connecting. And again, we don't make the decision. I live in Santuit Woods. I'm part of the ones that was cut out. I'm not part of the sewering system. I'm fine. I actually paid $20,000 for a new system 2.5 years ago. And I'll be paying on that for the probably next 10 years. I'll probably be connected to sewer before I finish paying that off. But again, that's just my opinion. I don't know if my opinion, if you have any questions to what I just said, I think just, again, it's transparency, it's clean. If it's divided up shared amongst the entire town, I think that's the best policy to continue with. Again, that was the policy phase 1. I just think it could present confusion about what does that mean? Well, and then people are going to, if you present the options, the other problem I think you would have is, well, why did you look at the options? And why don't we do that? Because then you're going to have a small like civil war between phase 2 and phase 1 people, and then other people that are not even connecting, which is the other 80% of the town is going to say, yeah, charge them a betterment. Why not? I think because then you're going to be like, if it's going to be less money on my end, if I'm not getting sewer, yeah, hit them. But then what about phase 1?
Well,
How
phase
is that
2 would
fair?
win. There's only 500 of us in phase 1, so.
Right.
It's simply numbers. But
So
perhaps a good way to not confuse the public and give the impression that we're endorsing the imminent and immediate use of betterments in a discriminatory manner, maybe we can forego the formal vote and just instruct you to, as part of the due diligence of funding a sewer, look into it, crunch the numbers.
You do that. I mean, like I said, you keep using transparency. I think we are being not transparent if we don't look into it. I think we're
No,
actually
yeah.
hiding things.
No, I mean, looking into it again, listen, you're the commission, it's your call. I get that. And you should look into, and I think you brought up, fees, looking into fees, and
Yeah.
that's absolutely correct.
That's a bigger question.
Because people are going to start asking, and are we working with, who's going to be doing the billing? Is, the cost is all about water usage, flow. What is that bill? Those questions are going to come up, and I'm hoping we have those answers. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that, two things. A couple of months ago, last fall, I was taking questions, and a couple came up to me. They had moved here last year from some other place where they had betterments for some project, and they were experienced with that. And one of the first questions out of their mouth was about betterments. And other people have asked about that the same way, and of course, the fee structure. So I know that the question's out there, so it's probably good to do the analysis, at least to some degree, to back up the statements and to give us more confidence.
Yep.
Perhaps, especially when we're answering questions from the public. But the other thing I was going to say is on the fee structure, a conversation in depth I had with Ray Jack last year was about the importance of coming up with a fee structure as soon as possible. So I don't know where that is in the works, but I think we do need to
It's well
address that.
underway. Matt Abrams actually has the first breakdown of like, these are things like, permits. Is there a permanent privilege fee that people tie on afterwards, or even to connect? What the cost is for inspections, just laying that all out. Is it going to be a tiered billing system? So he's already built the spreadsheet for that, so we can start playing with the numbers to what, our target goal of costs are going to be. We've also gone around and talked to other towns, like today we talked to Barnstable.
Yeah.
Find out what their quarterly billing is, and, for the homeowners, just so we can try to stay comparative, because I know the vineyard costs, and that'll never fly over here. So we're looking at what's comparable to the current location. We have also started looking into what type of software we're going to use to do the billing. The original assumption was it was going to be the water department, but their current software is not set up to be able to do the billing. They can help us in a lot of the phases, but ultimately they can't run it separately. It's a whole nother module. I guess it's a smaller company and the person is not going to do it. So we're going to go with the town's munis billing. So we had a meeting actually last week. Gave us an overview of the whole utility billing portion. It looks like it can be funded out of my current budget this year, so we can get it up and running, get the training done, so we can be ready to go the first quarter. The only thing we're looking at right now is the meter reads. Are we going to just have the water department get them for us? Because they're not going to do any extra reading for us, but they'll feed us the numbers when they do it annually. We're looking at quarterly just to kind of keep the cost down every pay period for the customers. So if that's the case, I might go out and just buy the reader, we call it the gun for short, but the gun to go out and be able to read people's properties using the water department meters. There are properties that don't have meters on them because they're still on well. So we're looking at two options. Barnstable gave an option today. The first one we were going to have was have the people install on their private well, just a meter that we can read. But Barnstable actually takes properties like that and they use drain system. It's more of a fixed cost.
Yeah, but we need a simple answer for people that ask the question and say, well, a fee structure is in the works, so to speak, but it will be through the municipal
And I think
billing process.
I will bring in an example of our rough draft
Okay.
fee scale. So basically it'll be one sheet and it'll
Yeah.
break down all the different costs,
All
what it would
right,
cost.
I didn't mean to derail the discussion.
Absolutely.
I also
can do
think
that.
it's important to remember that the fee structure won't really come together until we've got a heck of a lot more sewer infrastructure built. Right now, we're looking to support the operations of the plant
Yeah.
with only 500 homes.
Yeah.
Ms. Sprout?
I have a question about just the word betterments. People see that it's kind of in the cloud. How would you describe to people exactly what the betterment is? Because now we're talking construction phase versus what the homeowner's gonna have to do when they actually have to pay for the construction that ends at that 10-foot pipe. So can you help people visualize this? So going forward, when you say betterments, they have a really clear idea of what you're talking about and who it impacts.
So to really simplify a betterment, A, it would impact anybody that would be directly connected to the sewer, not the rest of the town. And what a betterment basically is a temporary tax. So as opposed to raising your taxes permanently to pay for the structure, this project, let's say it's $500 a year is what it, let's just throw a round number out there, right? I can guarantee you at the end of 30 years paying off this loan, that they're not going to say, hey, guess what, we're done paying off the loan, here's your $500 back a year. We all heard that with the Mass Pike, right? Temporary tax, and we're still paying for that. Whereas a betterment is a tax with a deadline. You have your portion, you know what your portion is, and at the end of paying your portion, it goes away. You can pay it off tomorrow, or you can pay it off for 30 years. That is the option. Now, I heard something amazing today. One of the towns I was talking to, actually, they charge interest on their betterment. Never heard of that before, but that's what they're doing. But it usually is just, its simplest forms, it's a temporary tax that does go away. The problem where it gets tricky is, and that's where I said we just got to evaluate it, is let's say, for example, everybody's bill would be the $500 a year, but if we did a 50-50 split, and I'll just keep it round easy, we might be able to reduce every other taxpayer down to $250, but that might take the people under the betterment, instead of being $500, they might be $1,000. So that's what we're trying to see. So betterment's not like the knee-jerk go-to and, you're getting benefits. We got to see what is it. Now, if it's a case where we might be able to drop everybody down to $250, you might stay at $550. Well, that might be a reasonable scenario if we don't have other funding sources. But that's why we just want to be able to run through the exercise, because if somebody who does have an understanding of betterments decides they want to ask the question, I want to at least be able to tell them, hey, we ran through the exercise, but ultimately, if the commission votes prior to the meeting that this is not what we want to pursue.
I have another question.
Yep.
A hypothetical. Say that we go along with no betterments in phase one, because that was very clear, absolutely. And we're not saying that it wasn't clear for 2, 3, 4, and 5. But we knew that the first 500 homes, to get the plant started, that was it. What if we added some sort of a line to your tax bill if you wanted to voluntarily pay a betterment in phase one?
I don't know the legalities of municipal finance to that point. I mean, I do have their Bible downstairs, I call it, their big book. That's usually because when they hit me with some cool, big accounting term, I'm like, what did they say?
I'm just saying that on the federal taxes, you can pay more taxes if you want to. There is a line.
Yeah, you can.
You can. I don't know why you would want to, but I'm just saying that there's a line. I didn't know if that kind of technique could be brought into our local area.
I have talked to Don about different possible ways to get funding sources, like look at our flow neutral bylaw, and sometimes you have to get credit land because you want to put something that you don't have enough acreage. But what if that land is not available in the same watershed? Technically, you can't do it. So then the thought process is, well, why couldn't people then say, well, I couldn't find land in this watershed, or I didn't currently own? Well, you would basically write a check for X amount of dollars per square foot of whatever property you need, and the town could use that to then offset nitrogen within the community, which then could be used for tying people in, paying for capital project costs. But these are all things that she gave me a whole list to do the research of the different types of accounts they're allowed to open. And I haven't found one yet that falls into that category of being able to do that, so. But it's a learning process in some of this. I mean, I'm all about being creative and trying to figure out, I call it my outside the box approach. Never start inside the box, too ADD for that. So let's start from the outside, let's be creative, let's see if there's other things we can do. So we are looking into it, it's just not sure how we can set up that fund yet.
How do my commissioners feel about my proposal of not taking a vote, but simply directing our wastewater superintendent to crunch the numbers, do the research, look at what betterments would mean?
I agree. Let's just propose.
Is there any,
You're good.
thank you very much. Is there any other
Thank you all.
public commentary on this?
Well, I'm thinking because the time limit for actually adding something to the town warrant has passed.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think if we make a point now about betterments, it will be confusing because we can't
Yeah.
formally
I agree.
present it within the time frame. So a more casual, a more informal approach, I think, would be just fine.
All right,
Perfect, I can go with
please
that.
proceed.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, we'll move to our fifth and final agenda item. I think this will be a quicker discussion because while there is a lot of sources of funding we're targeting, I think, well, I'll just read it out. Identify any additional or new areas where efforts should be spent to appropriate funding to mitigate costs to the taxpayers. My thought on this is I'd like to take the next 2 weeks and gather this information from the various stakeholders within Town Hall and talk to, I've already met with our state rep and other meetings like that. I would like to consolidate this information and give everyone else a chance to think outside the box as well and bring this together for not our next meeting.
Yeah, next meeting.
Yeah, we could do that for
Yeah.
our next meeting, I
Yeah.
think.
Can you include in your questions to people, the Massachusetts Environmental Trust?
This
I'm
is,
curious about that one.
this is exactly what I'd like to consolidate, bring everybody's ideas to the table
That
and then
one
make
just-
it a deliverable.
It popped up this week in my inbox, so I'm kind of curious
Perfect.
about it. Okay.
And I'd like to reach out via Mashpee TV, via our friends at the Enterprise. I'd like to encourage the public. There's a lot of professionals, there's a lot of people who have worked in various different sectors, engineering, funding. Would like to hear from you too, if you have ideas of where to look for additional funding so that we don't have to just throw this on the back of our taxpayers. Phase one of the sewer was expensive, and guess what we didn't do? Throw it on the backs of our taxpayers. Now we need to keep doing that if we're going to enjoy the support for clean water that we have from our town. Madam Vice Chair, do you have any commentary on this?
I don't. I do agree with moving forward to get additional information about funding sources, though.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Jerry?
Chair.
I just wanted to point out, I did happen to look up, trying to find more ways for the people that are going to be tying in to be able to pay for this. It's not a grant or anything, but I did learn that Cape Cod 5 actually already does have a fund set up for loan for people tying into sewers. They're recognized that on Cape Cod. It's going to be very common. I'm going to have Karen put it up on the webpage just so people can look at it. It's a chance, like I said, to get another loan. It's basically a 15-year term, minimum amount of $5,000, maximum amount of $25,000 with a 10% APR, 180 monthly payments, and it's basically $10.47 per $1,000 that you borrow. But I have it summarized on one sheet, and we'll put it on the page, just that way people have another thing they can look into if other options aren't panning out for them.
That's great work, Jared. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions and comments from our commissioners? From the public? Well, Lynn's already leaving, so I think we can.
I move we adjourn.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.